Good afternoon. Can you guys hear me? All right. Great. Thanks. Well, welcome to the next to the last session at Accelerate on readiness and change management for implementing the Apttus middle office solutions. I'm Stephanie Bailey. I'm a customer success manager at Apttus, and I'm here to introduce Marilee from Snapchat and Susan Walski from Cardinal Health. Both these ladies have implemented the Apttus solutions within their organizations, and they each have like a different story to tell on how they did it. One used a rip and replace, while the other one went with more of the crawl, walk method. So with that, I will pass it over to Marilee.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. I'm Marilee Silvera. I'm a senior program manager of legal operations at Snap Inc., also known as Snapchat, which is why I have my Bitmoji headshot there. So I manage all of the legal systems, build and manage and implement for Snap. My history with Apttus, I've actually implemented at two very different companies. My first experience was at a super corporate, global, established semiconductor. We were moving from established process, working from a homegrown system, moving into Apttus and Salesforce. And then my second most recent experience with Snap, obviously rapidly growing startup, and we were just using shared folders. So didn't really have any process, didn't have a system to move from, and kind of just started from scratch there. Same key takeaways, both implementations. So the first one is assess your existing processes. The second is take a tiered approach. And the third is invest time on quality documentation. So I'll elaborate on each of these key takeaways in the next slides. The first one, assess existing process. You want to make sure that your processes are scalable before you implement the system. So it's not efficient to implement a system and try to achieve that process excellence at the same time. So really ask yourself and think critically about the processes that you're going to implement so that you can scale, automate, grow, and really kind of capitalize the use of the system there. So there are a couple examples on these slides, or on this slide for kind of what you want to ask yourself before you start that implementation. So really, what are your primary deal types? Are these similar to each other? Can you utilize, one record type for multiple deal types? Or are you going to need to have a bunch of different record types? Same thing, do you have multiple templates established? You need to create those. You need to standardize your terms before you move forward. Can you roll out a self-serve model right away? Do you need to start with kind of a hand-holding to the business? There are a bunch of different questions that you should be asking yourself before you move forward, again, to capitalize really on this investment. Once you have those processes established, you want to take a tiered approach. So the first thing I did at both companies was try to identify the low risk, high volume, and templatized deals. So for example, NDAs obviously, high volume and mostly low risk. Procurement related deals, low dollar amount here, easy to kind of templatize and automate into more of a self-serve option. Sales deals, if you have low-risk order forms that you're, dime a dozen, you can go ahead and get those templatized and moved into the system. And the next really good kind of, aftermath of being able to templatize those lower risk, high volume deals is that you can really build, train, and execute on each process, and the system really kind of builds off itself. So you already have that beginning architecture to move from, and your users will already have that kind of base knowledge. And really, regardless of how complex the deal is, the workflow in the system will really mimic each other. So you can use that to your advantage when you're training your users. Next, invest time on quality documentation. So this is both for documenting the actual process and documenting those training materials. I learned this kind of, not the hard way, but I didn't realize that if I spend time in the beginning that I would make up the time. So the return on investment here is huge, where if you really do invest that time to document all the process right off the bat and really take time in creating super spoon feeding type training materials, you personally as the admin or the point of contact or the subject matter expert won't have to give as much time as the rollout goes, and you can really rely on those materials. So can't recommend that enough. Definitely spend the time and create it. There's a snippet here of one of the training guides that I created with literally just every step by step with, obviously you can see the annotations there. And then you can also try to designate a point person or, like a lead or an ambassador, whatever you want to call it, to really act as the first responder so that you're not getting bogged down and you can use your time more wisely to kind of build your system out and improve it as you go, rather than answering like, how come I can't save this when my required field is blank? And it's like, well, did you look at the document? Make sure that your field is, filled in, and then you can save it. Simple questions like that should be going to another point of contact so that you have your time to really improve the system and use your skills that you have. So in summary, again, assess those existing processes before implementing. We never want to automate or scale a bad process. So like I said, think critically about your existing process before you decide to systematize. Taking that tiered approach, so identify those deal types that make sense to implement first versus those more high risk, more complex deals. So this obviously has a two-tier approach in itself of helps you get those lower risk contracts out, but it also lets the system architecture build on itself as you move forward with building out your contract lifecycle management system. And lastly, like I said, invest time on the quality documentation and training materials, as this will only save you time later on. And that's all I have for you. So next up is Susan.
Thank you, Marilee. I'm Susan Walski. I work for Cardinal Health. I've been with the company for about 15 years, been in this role managing contracting for about 6 months, 8 months maybe. And we chose Apttus in October. And I have had a career in change management, so this was a perfect fit for me to try and help our company kind of get to the 21st century in contracting. For those of you who aren't familiar with Cardinal Health, we're the business behind healthcare, and our job is really to take all of that transactional, administrative, business stuff out of the hands of the hospital so that they can care for patients. And so for us, a lot of our contracting is with customers, and the contracting covers all of our products and our distribution services, so it's a pretty complex contracting environment. We have about 50,000 employees globally. We've pretty much grown through acquisition, which comes with its own challenges. We're about $120 billion annually. We're ranked 35th in the Fortune Global 500, and as I mentioned before, our contracting environment is incredibly complex. Our customers are grouping together for contracting purposes. Sometimes they want to contract by themselves. It's very, very difficult to really get a great deal on the table. So unlike Marilee, we didn't have a lot of low-hanging fruit where we had easy contracts we could do, so we had to take a slightly different approach. So 3 things that I would recommend is kind of structured around these 3 topics of organizing, communicating, and iterating. Let's start with organizing. We had about 5,000 legacy documents that we had to put in the system. Our change management tactic was really to enable compliance. You can't do that if you don't have your legacy contracts in the system. So we had to go through a process of taking those pieces of paper and get them into the technical solution. So we digitize them, organize them by customer, and then prioritize those for the most critical contracts that we can implement first. We did use a vendor for that, Sumiti, but that was a really key thing for us to do and helped us really get our contracts organized. We designed our process, though, for the future state. So we built our templates and are in the process of building our templates. We've been live for about a month. So we're rebuilding our templates and looking at our templates to support the future state. And our metadata has to support, we're using kind of the agreement record as a normalization of our legacy contracts that are going to enable us to get into the future, but we're not going to be inhibited by the way that we were contracting in the past. And so that's really been a big challenge for us, but it is really a critical step, so we don't have to keep contracting the way that we did in the past. And we've established high-level business processes to really guide operational and system design, and we're looking at ways to continuously improve throughout our process. The second topic is to communicate. We have about, I'd say, 15 different stakeholder groups that are involved in contracting at one stage or another. We've had several conversations with those groups, and they all want to approve, and they all want to have a say in how we are contracting. So we really had to get them identified and start talking to them very early in the process. Not only because they were part of what we put in the contract, but they're also involved in executing on the contract terms. And so in order to enable the compliance, we had to get them involved. And we needed to have the visibility to all of those contracting relationships so that we could make sure we were executing that at the right level. And one of the first things we did was we established a communication and change management plan. So we have a bi-weekly call with all of the key stakeholders, and we tell them what we're learning. There are no secrets. We don't hide the bad news. Some of the key decisions we had to make, we vetted it through that group and got feedback on our approach. And it has been a huge benefit because now, as we're really getting ready to clean up and ramp up, which I'll get into in the next point, they understand where we are and they understand the role that they can play in helping us. And all of our training is coming through that group. So we're saying, this is what we're thinking about, how we're thinking about approaching a particular group, and they're like, that would work, that won't work. So we're really getting good feedback on how to kind of get the message out to all these various stakeholders. And then finally, iterating. We did the big bang. We're leveraging out of the box functionality, but we have to get this thing up and running in a few short months, and we have to be fully functional by the end of our fiscal year, which is June 30th. So we established a crawl, walk, run strategy where we're like, okay, we're going to get a little bit in, we're going to learn a lot, and now we're going to start ramping it up as we've learned what we needed to do. So we used a soft go live, and we have learned a ton in the last month that is really helping us kind of get up to speed. And we believe it's going to reap a lot of benefits as we ramp up to not only the additional contracts that we're putting in that are part of this first wave, but we have about 20 more waves of different types of contracts we're going to have to bring into the system over the next few months. And we have created a learning process. So I am a Lean Six Sigma black belt, so I'm kind of wired to do continuous improvement. And we've set up the structure to really use the data that is in Apttus to figure out where we can optimize our process, where we need to kind of get rid of some of the things that are not enabling us to standardize. How do we create learning on which clauses are winning? How do we really enable our sales force to be more successful in contracting using data? So that's really kind of our approach. In summary, the organization of our data was really key. Having an understanding of your processes, your documents, your information, and then putting it in a structure that allows you to get it into the system, very key. Communication has pretty much saved us during our implementation because as we are really working to ramp this thing up quickly, we bought the solution in October and we're already live. So we've had to do a lot of communicating and sharing of information and engagement in order to get our organizational support, because any one of those groups that doesn't want to buy into the solution causes us a problem in the long run. And then iterating. For us, it was really important to start small and then just learn fast and start to bring in contracts as quickly as you can. Really has helped us to learn the system. If we had spent 18 months standardizing our processes and doing a lot of the things that really you should do, we would have been behind the eight ball because we didn't understand the technology at all. So by going live, we were able to learn in the system, and it's allowed us to kind of ramp up more quickly. So that's what I have.
Thanks, Susan. For today. These slides will be available on the Apttus website a couple weeks. I don't know the timeline, but you'll have them available. And both the ladies will be available for questions after this, and you can come ask them if you want to get any strategies or any additional information. So thank you for your time. Have a good day.